So when we talk about different types of protection and different types of safety equipment for combustible dust applications, we use what is referred to as the NFPA, which is the National Fire Prevention Association. And in that code, in that standard, it talks about different commodities. With the new NFPA 660, it's combined all the different commodities into different chapters. So depending on the type of dust you have, depending on what chapter you follow. So for example, if it's a wood dust application, you would still use NFPA 660, chapter 24, and it points out all the risks and it points out all the different types of equipment that you would need in association with either fire protection or explosion protection. Next slide, Andy. So these are some of the products and some of the solutions that we can offer as far as layers of protection for combustible dust applications. We offer both prevention, isolation, venting, and suppression systems in accordance with whatever type of industry you may need. Next slide, Andy. So as far as fire prevention technologies, we can do many different things, including if you have return air applications, we can provide abort gates depending on if it calls out for that in the NFPA. If you're returning air back into the building, basically what the abort gate does is it basically shuts off that side of the duct and it prevents fire, smoke, burning material from entering the building. We also offer explosion-proof drums, which basically protect and isolate the bottom of the hopper discharge from the dust collector or the vessel that you're trying to protect. Spark traps, which would be placed inside ductwork, and CO2 fire suppression systems, which we install inside of the collector or vessel that you're protecting. And basically it shoots CO2 and suffocates the fire. Next slide, please. So here's a little video of some of our products and solutions with our spark detection and extinguishing. Different applications that we can work with: pulp, paper, tissue, food, wood, recycling, tobacco. Spark detection is basically where a sensor is installed in the ductwork, and when there is a spark that passes by, it'll send a signal back to a control panel that will tell an output device of some sort, whether it's water extinguishing, a mechanical fire break shutter, an abort gate, to trigger and basically mitigate the potential for a fire. So in this case, they're showing water extinguishing, which is something we can do as well, and provide booster pumps too. We can also do redetect. I've done a lot of applications where sometimes they want to be safer than sorry, and we can do detect, extinguish, redetect, and then possibly put a mechanical fire break shutter as close to the vessel as possible. And basically what happens is it's a knife gate and it triggers and it shuts that duct down. Thermal probes is another additional layer of protection where basically they can either detect at a certain set point temperature or a rise in temperature that can also activate certain equipment as well. And broken bag detectors or dust probes on the clean air side. If you have maybe a bag that's broken or a leak in your filter. And then I talked briefly about the abort gate, but that's what the abort gate looks like. It closes off the duct in the event of a triggering event of a spark, dust probe or thermal probe activation, and it closes off that duct work. We can do different types of controls with this. We can offer different single zone controls up to a 5-zone control panel as well. So we can offer many different inputs, up to 16 different inputs and 10 outputs. Next slide, Andy. So here's sort of a flow chart and basically equipment lined up in a collector application. As you can see at item 1, there's your spark detector. Item 2 would be your water extinguishing. And then as I talked about before, we can do a redetect and a fire break shutter. We also listed down there the NFPA chapters and paragraphs that are associated with these equipment. Next slide, Andy. A little bit more about some of our products as far as what we can offer. The abort gate, the spark trap, and the drum. Next slide, Andy. Our system. So sometimes we have applications where water isn't can't be used for a reason or not, whether it's because the food process can't get wet, or maybe there's no water supply for the end user. We can do a CO2 fire suppression system inside of the vessel you're trying to protect. And in our solutions, we can cover up to about 900 cubic feet of vessel. And they're activated by thermal probes. Next slide, Andy. So the next part of that we just talked about fire prevention technologies. Now we're going to get into explosion protection technologies. So we offer many different types of passive technologies, including explosion isolation valves, venting, diverters, rotary airlocks. And so this is sort of like a chart or a picture of where you would put these pieces of equipment. When it comes to explosions, NFPA calls out for explosion venting and isolating between vessels. So basically, if you have interconnected vessels, you want to provide protection in between each vessel that's connected. Next slide, Andy. This is a video of our explosion isolation valve, the VigiFlap, and how they're tested today.
On the market today, there are several manufacturers of flap valves. Most flap valves are only tested in connection with a single pipeline between the vented vessels and the flap valve. These tests do not include the pipeline on the protected zone of the process. Without including the protected zone pipeline in certification testing, flap valves may not experience the same pressures and conditions during testing as they would in normal use. Test data proves the need for a pipeline on both sides of the flap valve to simulate the conditions according to intended use. Any test that does not include a pipe on the protected side of the flap valve has resulted in a certification and installation of flap valves that can fail.
So how we test our VigiFlaps is we put both sides of the pipe together, because what it's going to explain is there's going to be pressure on both sides when an explosion happens. Basically how it works is the pressure wave is going to close that flap shut, and the fireball is not going to be able to pass through to the other side of the duct.
The very high oscillations in the pipeline come from the powerful closing of the flap, which converts dynamic pressure to static pressure and produces shock waves, the oscillations being much smaller in the vessel. In normal use, it is likely that the pressure on the protected side of the flap valve may briefly be higher than the pressure on the unprotected side, due to the high acoustic oscillations on both sides of the flap. So if the locking device is not prepared for a possible reopening, it can lead to a secondary explosion.
There's your pressure wave pushing the flap. this valve wasn't certified in accordance with a secondary pipe with the other side of the pressure, and you get the explosion on the other end. So we offer the VigiFlap, which is our explosion isolation valve. It can be used on both clean and dirty side of the collector or the vessel that you're protecting. Next slide, Andy. This is basically how we can configure our explosion isolation valves, our VigiFlaps. We can put VigiFlaps in a lot of different configurations. It's very versatile when it comes to how you can install them. As you can see, you can put it on the clean side, which would be the left side of that vessel it's protecting. And if you have two inlets, you can put multiple valves. You can have one on one inlet, one on another inlet. You can see that there's elbows in between that. And again, it shows you the pressure closes that flap, and then the fireball comes always after the pressure wave. With the round design, you have minimum pressure drop, so you're not losing your airflow in your process. And you can there's different positions of the flap. It showed a floating position where basically the airflow is keeping that flap open. And then you can also do it in a flap locked open position where it's locked in the open position as well. And you can install it vertically as well. There's a position indicator on these flap valves to let you know if the flap's open or closed. That's that little indication on the side of the valve where you see the green and the red, and then once it shuts, that indication will swing towards the red to let you know that your flap is closed, and there might have been an event, or there may need to be some maintenance with it. These are ATEX certified. Here's a testing video of our VigiFlap. You can see the pressure wave close the valve with that position indicator going into the red, and then the fireball is not able to pass through because the flap is shut. Some other explosion protection equipment we offer. We also have a no return valve, a diverter, and dust sensors and different components that can be installed with your explosion isolation valves with a fully listed UL panel shop. We can do our own controls. When it comes to explosion venting, we have a variety of different solutions. If you have an indoor application where you need venting on your collector or your vessel, we can offer a flameless vent that goes on top of the explosion vent. And basically what happens is, in the event of combustion, of deflagration, the vent will open, which will relieve the pressure, and then the fireball will be quenched by the flameless mesh that you see on top of the flameless vent. And basically on the other side of that flameless vent, all you're gonna get is smoke and cloud. We can use these with elevators, dryers, cyclones, filters, whatever type of vessel that you're trying to protect. And we do all the calculations in-house as well. Next slide, Andy. Here's a video of our venting solutions. As you can see, a dust collector without proper venting, storage silos without proper venting, bucket elevators without proper venting. Yeah, Matt had spoke briefly about ignition source, flame, sparks, heat, and friction, and suspended particles, combustible particles, and confinement to get that pentagon. what we can do is if your collector is also outdoors, we can just put standard vents on there, and we also do offer vent deflectors, which are basically if you have property or people nearby, you can put this vent deflector panel on the explosion relief panel, and in the event of the explosion, the vent panel folds over, relieves the pressure, and the fireball shoots up and out, so it doesn't cause any injury to any nearby personnel. We offer different types of explosion vents, flat panels, dome panels. We also offer round panels and high vacuum panels for high vacuum systems. Equipment can be installed indoors. We also have a new flameless low profile vent called the VigiFlam VI, which can be used on bucket elevators and bucket conveyors. It's 50% less volume, and it sits really low profile on your bucket elevators, bucket conveyors to provide explosion venting protection. There's the venting. Those are some flat panels on a elevator. And then some flameless vents. The panel bursts, and then the fireball, like I mentioned before, gets quenched by the layers of stainless steel mesh, and all you get is smoke. Some industry-specific applications. Next slide, Andy. Like I said, we can, depending on what type of application, we can provide solutions for woodworking, food processing, metalworking, the food and agricultural industry, and paper industries. It just depends on what your DHA comes back with and what type of protection you're looking for. And we basically provide suggestions based on what the NFPA calls out in the standard.